If it's a brand new intervention, it's probably very good, if possible, to get the potential staff person involved in the design of the intervention. You know, having someone as a consultant that you might be interested in hiring, and of course no promises, but work with them as a consultant so that they can actually help you design. You get to see what they're like in terms of working with them. You can also see where their strengths are, and you can give them a feel for who you are. The second thing is, if possible, always understand that when you hire someone brand new, it's going to take a while for folks to kind of acclimate to your organization. Folks don't just come in and do the project. Folks have to come in, understand the organization, get a feel for things, understand what they can and can't do. And so I think it's always good to get staff in as soon as possible. And when you can't, when you really just can't get anyone and you've got to start because the funder wants you to start the project, think of your current staff and think of how you might be able to borrow some staff to do certain things, bring in other folks to handle what they've been doing. I think that when you look at the packages that are available, like Microsoft Project Manager is an excellent tool, but it only does certain things. It lets you load in what you know about the different steps, break up the hours. What it doesn't give you really is a flow chart in terms of accountability. So for example, it doesn't do the connection, or you can't graphically make it so that the person who is doing the field testing of the intervention is meeting back with the project director, and that the folks who are doing the focus groups are meeting back with the intervention designers. You can't really build in those kind of steps. You can do it, you know, written in a written part of the text, but there's no way to show that visually. And sometimes I think taking the opportunity, you know, what we usually do is when we begin a new intervention, a new project, get all the team together, put newsprint on all the wall, and start literally in figures first, scoping out what the relationships are. So if someone's working on materials, brochures, or new tools for learning, who has to interact with them? Is it just the project director? Is it the trainer? Is it the person who's in the field recruiting? If someone is doing the actual training, who do they have to interact with? Because that's one of the things that most of these tools, whether it's Project Manager, there are some PERT chart or Gantt chart kind of programs out there, they don't quite show those kinds of relationships. Also, I know that, you know, Gantt charts are a very popular thing, time phasing charts, anything that can just help you up front start to ask the question, if we're going to do 10 trainings, how much time does it really take? You know, yeah, the first one probably is going to take longer because it'll be the first time we do it. But what might we be forgetting? Are we forgetting the amount of time it takes to secure the space, to recruit the participants? Is it, if we're going to do it within a health department or a CBO, what's their lead time so that they can book the rooms and have people on premises? Also, what are the kinds of things you're forgetting? If we're working with very low income or folks who have day jobs and we're bringing them into training, who's going to take care of their kids? Who's going to take care of all kinds of other access issues? And unless you kind of talk that out to ad nauseum at the very beginning, you're probably going to forget a lot of those steps. And you've really got to ask every question possible. You know, if we chose to do the training at 7 o'clock in an area that the highway runs by and it's rush hour, you're probably not going to have people there at 7 o'clock. You know, think through all the pieces, because even the way you design your intervention in terms of its setting really has a lot to do with what it takes to get you there, if it's not on your premises. Or if it is on your premises, what are the other kinds of things that are competing? You know, and I think those are the kinds of things that none of the tools will help you with. We had an experience where there was a project that was trying to recruit women who had been in domestic violence situations with their spouses or their partners. And in the same building, in the room next door, we were recruiting men to do work around teen pregnancy. And so what you had happening was you actually almost had partners kind of next door to each other, and it scared off the women. And I think that was something that no one thought through and thought, what else is happening in our space at the same time, because we want to make sure that this is a safe space. You know, I think we all try to do budgets and we try to be as proactive and as thoughtful as possible, but there's always where you get to the end and someone forgot the press conference, someone forgot that there's going to be a media event, someone forgot that there had to be some kind of wrap-up report. And so I think one of the first things to do is to figure out, first of all, what's my evaluation phase? How much money does that take? Put it aside. Don't spend it. Don't think that you have it on your budgets. Pull it away. The next thing is to think, okay, if the project ends on May 31st, how many days really will it take for me to write up what happened, share that with the funder, clean up any other processes? If it's a final report, will I need an editor? Will I need someone else to vet this? Does it have to go back out to the community? How much is it going to cost me to put stamps on the report? All those kinds of things, because those are the things we forget. And that's usually what a director or an executive director or the head of the program will start screaming about and saying, what do you mean you need an extra $3,000? So I think thinking through what are the kind of tail that your project has, what is the tail that's going to be left behind the door when it closes, and try to anticipate those things as much as possible. Media is something that most folks don't plan for, that if you have a successful project and you write up a great report and you disseminate your findings or what you've done, oftentimes there's a media hit that someone might want to know more about it. The local news, television, other folks want to talk to you, and folks usually aren't prepared because they've wound down the project, the staff might not be there anymore. Who is going to be able to carry that on? And so that's the other kind of thing to think about is, if the project is ending and there are no more funds to continue that activity and folks are going to leave, who is going to be the institutional memory for what happened? And is there time for them to kind of get up to speed with the folks before they leave so that they understand what to talk about afterwards? And again, that's something that none of us really do very well, and we need to think about that much more. I think you have to think about your quality assurance. And one of the first things about quality assurance for any kind of manager is, a while ago, talking about a process where you would talk about all the interrelations and connections of a project and where things have to go and who has to look at something, who has to be involved. Is a manager needs to think very much up front, where is it that I want to keep my finger on this process? Is it that I think the staff might be a little rough around the edges in terms of their qualitative research skills, so I want to be part of that? Is it that I really want to watch the very first training and the last training because I want to see if they've improved, how good it was all the way through? Do I want to be in situations where I'm asking the consumers or the clients some questions about what did they think about the program? It's a little bit tough because as a manager, anytime you step in the room, the staff are going to be a little bit nervous. So you need to think about how you do that without kind of scaring folks or putting folks off. But as a manager, you're responsible. And so you need to think through, what are those pieces that I really need to check on? You might have the best staff in the whole world, and many of us are blessed to have fabulous staff. But you still need to have kind of an eye on things because you never want to get surprised by what didn't happen. And I think the other thing is communication. If you're a good manager, you instill with your staff a strong sense of communication in terms of, tell me what's going wrong. Tell me what's not working. Because I don't want to just hear about the success. I want to know about what's not working because I want to be prepared in case I get a question from the funder, I get a question from some political something, and I want to know how to respond to it. So if we had a training session that was designed for young people and no one showed up, I want to know what the issues were. Why didn't they show up? Don't just tell me it didn't happen. Tell me why it didn't happen. And I think a good manager doesn't just ask for yes, no. They ask for why or how or what. And so I think that's part of that process. If you ask for the why, the what, the how, it gives you as a manager the ability to not micromanage, but to give advice. And to say, well, actually, I worked in a similar situation, and when this happened, one thing you might try is this or this, versus do this, do that. And I think if you can kind of hit that tone, it does help. It helps the staff grow, and it helps you as a manager be able to manage a few more things without having to do everything yourself. I think formal evaluation data is really important. If you're going to evaluate, you should be looking at what you're getting and understanding what the data are kind of indicating. But I think, again, it's asking what's not working is almost more important than what's working, because we all intend for things to work, and if it works, we tend to know why it did, but we don't usually know about why things don't work. And you can often learn more about what didn't work. So even with a funder, if a funder wants to tell you that this didn't work and I'm not happy with this, engaging in the discussion and asking, work with us for a moment to help me understand what it would look like if it had been successful. What would have been different here? And let us also respond to you to explain a little bit about kind of what's been going on and why we're here. Because again, it's not just one of those things of saying, oh, it's great, it's great, it's great. Because especially if you're funded by someone in the community, a health department funding a community-based organization, or a foundation funding a community-based organization in the same community, the funder's going to know that something didn't work. And so it's good to kind of get that out there, put it on the table, and just talk about how you're going to learn from that lesson. I think a couple of things to think about is, don't underestimate startup. Startup is something that folks always think, oh, we got the funding, it starts on May 1st, let's just do the work. And oftentimes startup means a whole lot more. If it's a brand new activity that you've never done before or that you're kind of stretching to do, think about like 3 months to get your staff trained and acclimated and understand what it's about. If it's something that you've been doing and it's an add-on, think about a month. But don't ever think that the project got funded May 1st, that means May 1st we've got to have services. You really need to build in that time, because if not, you're going to have a train wreck later on. Folks are going to be running, trying to do things too quickly. They wouldn't have taken the time to really think quality-wise through what has to happen, and that's a pressure that no one wants. The clients don't want that either, because as consumers, they're going to notice that things are a little bit short shrift or they've been done kind of crazily. And so really thinking about startup, I think, is one of the things that most folks, most of us don't do very well.